Hello, this is Barbara Field, and welcome to the Journey of Grief, Becoming Us Without Them. Today, I'm so excited about having Dr. Joyce Mikal-Flynn join us to talk about grief through her lens. Dr. Mikal-Flynn and I met in just a series of cool coincidences. We were both on the advisory council for the Salvation Army Adult Rehabilitation Center in Sacramento, California. And Joyce was just beginning to do research on the idea of post-traumatic growth and resilience. And we were so very lucky that she opted to do groups at the Salvation Army and offer this to the men that they would so not have been able to get if it wasn't for the terrific miracle of her being there. And all of the people who took her class really did experience growth and resilience. And it was just really neat to watch. And so how about if you introduce us to you and talk about grief through your lens?
Hi. So thank you, Barbara, for having me because there's our lives have intersected on different levels, and it's always been such a positive, wonderful collaboration. So I just have always admired the work that you do, and I just appreciate the support that you've given me through the work I've done. And you're right, with the Salvation Army, that was I think I was actually there for almost 3 years and did things quarterly. It was really, I learned so much and got so much from that experience, which is probably going to lead us into the whole notion about grief. Like, how do you manage, or how do you, put that into your system, your lifestyle, and what can you do around that? So as you talked about, I have clinically, I'm a nurse practitioner. Academically, I'm a professor emeritus now at Sacramento State University. I've been there for many years, teaching and doing research specifically on the idea of trauma-informed care, but focusing on building resilience and post-traumatic growth. And I was able to, over the last several years, create a course called Traumatology, an Introduction to Post-Traumatic Growth, that has become very, very successful at Sac State. A lot of students taking that. And over and above that, I do have my own company called drjmf.com or drjmf.com, which works with different entities and organizations and everything, bringing programming to facilitate the idea of post-traumatic growth and resilience building, also specifically job satisfaction and job retention, because a lot of people working with people going through things, it's tough.
Yes. So it was neat at the Salvation Army because I'm constantly asking people in the recovery field to let me interview them about their experience of grief in the recovery and ongoing sobriety. And a lot of them look at me like, what? So they've not even thought about how much is lost in the addictive lifestyle and before it even begins, and then how much is lost along the way. And that was the one thing you really did, was you helped the men formally honor and validate the losses they had experienced, and rather than ignoring them and suppressing them, how to capitalize on that as a springboard for growth and resilience. It was really a neat thing.
Man, thank you, Barbara. That is so well said. And I think you bring up some, we'll do this right now through the lens of addiction dependency, for example, because I was there for a while and actually I've written some articles about this. But I just love this notion of the grief and letting go, because you look at these men, we'll talk about specifically at the Salvation Army Adult Rehab Center, when I would talk to them about, when you leave this place, okay, so there's a lot of lots of little letting go. and there's grief and some sadness around that. There's some anticipation, excitement as well, but they're that because one of the, now they're in a place where they feel secure. They've, had good friends. They're in a fairly disciplined area that keeps that going. But one of the things I would talk about is, when you leave here, you can't go back to those same friends. You can't go back to those same people. And even though intellectually they knew that, it is very hard to say, yeah, you have to cut some past relationships in order to grow and develop in your own life. But even though some of those past relationships were not the best for you to have, there is still history in letting go. So I love the fact that you bring that notion to the forefront, because once you understand it's there, then you can do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can understand what some mental and physical aspects of that is and go, oh, well, that's my grief creeping up here, and this is what I can do about it. I think also when you talk about, the letting go and the changes that occur. I remember my son telling me this one song, I can't remember it. He goes, but Mom, it's always that this song says, every ending is a new beginning. And with that new beginning, there's some excitement and anticipation around that, but also it's closing maybe some doors, or, for that as you move into that new beginning. And what I like to tell people when I'm dealing with their trauma situation is this is a process. This is a process. And when that comes in, that depression or grief comes in, identify this as part of the process. And I wish I've done this so much, like when I work with veterans, and I really will say to them, I wish I could take this away from you, but I cannot. It is part of the process that you must learn from. Now I'm going to come back and pick you up because I can't leave you there. And then we're going to go that way. But this actually is an important part of the healing, resilience, growth process.
Absolutely. And when you say words like every ending is a new beginning to people that have just been devastated by a tremendous loss, they're like, the beginning of what? Like they say grief is a club that that you get invited to that nobody wants to join. So when you're just like, no, I don't want a new beginning, put it all back, give it all back. I don't want to begin. I want my life back. So getting people over that first hump of, no way, is there anything good going to come out of this?
Yeah. And, that brings in a couple of things. So I'm sure we'll get into, the system that I created to help people process through, to move through, is a system that I identified and named as Metahabilitation, or Metahab for short. And so I was very frustrated with the way we looked at trauma in terms of always, not always, but focusing on so much of what people can't do, what they're not going to be able to do, what's wrong, whatever. And I said, okay, there's a reality to that. I'm not blinded. I'm not foolish. When something happens to somebody, there's a loss and there's grief, and I get that. We need to focus on where that process is. And I identified Meta as going above and beyond habilitation, restoration. And in my doctoral work, through interviewing many, many people, I was able to understand through them telling me their experience, I could see patterns of behaviors that people did not overnight, but over time. And it created this system. So Metahab's not only a word, but it's also a system. And there are 6 stages to the system. And the first stage of that system is acute recovery. And in that stage, I tell people, this is part of the process, and we need to, if you are, if you need special help with your depression and your grief and your physical things that are going on, we need to get that special help, because this again is part of the process. Well, what's going to happen to me? And I go, I don't know. I don't really know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen. All I want you to do for this first stage, all I want you to do is to just get up in the morning, take a shower, and maybe do something. That's all I want you to do. And then let things start boiling with you. And then the second stage people come to, and I hope they come to, or I hear them say it, is what I call the turning point, where they have identified, I have no idea how I'm going to get through this, but I am making a conscious decision that I'm going to take some control and make some choices to move forward. And then third stage is, once they get into that, they really get into that. And this again is over time, where maybe they start going back to church. Maybe they get certain help they get. Maybe they're see a certain physician or get certain therapy or whatever they want to do. It's a very busy time. Stage 4 is what I call, time for insight. And that's adaptation and acceptance, where they've been super busy with things. They've been super busy with things. And now they get to kind of sit back and go, okay, what does this all mean? What am I doing? How did this work? What worked best? What do I know now I didn't know before? And then stage 5 is you got to get back into life. You got to get back into life, however that is. And I'm a generalist in trauma. So I'll do everything from spinal cord injuries to cancers to addiction dependency to vets to all sorts of things. So I don't tell them what to do. They tell me. I'm thinking about that. And I go, let's explore that, getting back into life. And then stage 6 is the final stage. And that's what I call Metahab, or taking on your future. When people have adopted a mindset that they know, okay, when I'm going through this, this is what I like to refer to. This is a call to action. It's like when people have triggers, they go, I'm triggered. I go, good. That's a call to action. You're being asked to act on something. So you do that, and with people go through, again, with every ending is a new beginning. This is a process you go through. And Metahab's not the only way to do it. It's an adjunct to existing therapies that already do fantastic stuff. But it is a road that it's a bit of a roadmap. It's a bit of a good chocolate chip cookie recipe that goes, oh, I've done this, and then I do this, and then I do this, and then I do this, so people can move through. Now, one of the things that I shared with you before, and I think is utterly important to recognize, is it doesn't make any difference how long your challenge or trauma or whatever has occurred. We integrate grief and depression in our midbrain. That is part of our structure. That doesn't go away. We find ways to use that grief and depression in this way. So when you see certain things or think back on a spouse that has passed or whatever, a diagnosis you got or whatever, you can still, like, you'll feel it, like, because your brain, it's there for a reason. That memory is there for a reason, but you have integrated it so much into your life that you feel it, and that's okay. Because like I said before, grief lives with growth. They're not separate entities. They can coexist. So if you've, whatever you've gone through and lost something, and there's just times, maybe it's the anniversary of somebody's death. Maybe it's I don't know, something that comes up and you go, oh man, I'm always feeling it. Go, that's okay. Your body went through a lot, and it's always going to remember that. So feel it, but you've still grown. And that to me is key.
Yeah, I think people, when they feel those, suddenly they feel the pain so big again. The story they often tell themselves is, oh no, nothing's changed. I'm going to be stuck in this forever. I'm never going to get better. And that's very depressing. It's sort of like that Mother May I game where you end up going all the way back to the beginning. But really, that's not true. You've grown, and the growth, you get to keep the growth, but you're still going to feel pain inside of the growth.
Right. You get to suffer. I mean, it's like one of the things that I use all the time when I do my talks. Um, well, let's just make something like super simple. So if somebody's ever had a cut or a laceration, you see the scar there. Well, that scar is always going to be there unless you get some sort of fancy plastic surgeon to fix that all up. And even then, but that scar will be there. And what I say is that scar, every time you look at that scar, that's a reminder of something that happened. But what our systems, see, we are built with these insane systems that do all this, and we need to pay attention to what those systems are doing. So let's say our skin system does heal. The scar is there, but what we need to understand is that scar tissue is stronger than the surrounding tissue. That is stronger. To re-injure yourself there, probably not. You can re-injure yourself, you can injure yourself around that scar tissue, but that scar tissue is stronger. And it doesn't mean that you have not become, that you haven't healed. You have. But that's a reminder. And that reminder is there for a whole host of reasons. Don't do this again. Remember how you got through this. Remember how you, so there's a lot of reasons those reminders are there. I think I get nervous about, like you say, well, what if I'm going to, not going to go through this? And I always stop, and because one of the things that I like to do when I talk to people is I never stage them. When we use Metahab, I have them read through the stuff and I say, where do you think you are? What stage do you think you're in? Well, I'm still in this. I said, okay, cool. That's where we need to start. Now, with that being said, as you read through this, what have you identified as something that has been that a strength in you? What have you identified as a way you've moved forward? What have you identified? Have you done anything? Well, I did kind of do this, or I go, there you go. Write that down. That's where we're starting. And so it's really, as I say, insight is a fuel that drives this train. And many times, and that's why I got frustrated and came up with Metahab, because I always, as you use this word earlier, and I love it, you honor. Sounds crazy, but you honor, you recognize something happened, something bad happened. In the midst of that, that is there. But with that, what are you going to do with that? Where are you going to go with that? And ultimately, and over time, you have the opportunity to take control and make some choices. Now, if somebody's not doing that, then I sit back and I never, and I don't usually don't use a lot of nevers, but I'm using it now. I never judge people. I go, that I may say that makes me sad because what I'm seeing in front of me is da da da. It used to, like, we'll bring back, I remember this so clearly when I was with Salvation Army, and I'd be working with these guys, and these guys, like, there was some crazy life stories they had, like a lot of stuff. But I remember when they would kind of go over, some of the stuff they did, I go, I don't really want to spend a lot of time on that. We don't need to talk a lot about what you did. I want you to start telling me successes you've had. And that was hard for them to come up with, right? So we started going into that. And then I said, here's what's really cool. I don't really know what you all did. I don't know if you were in prison, not in prison, in jail, whatever you did. I go, I look at you and I'm hearing you now. And what I see is like, I think this is how God meant you to be. Like you're with it and you're sitting up straight and you're engaged and you're doing this. I think this is how you were born to be like this. And this is what I see. And you could just see them sit up and then just take it on. And so sometimes I think as a person, I'm not a therapist. I'm not you, Barbara. I don't do therapy or counseling. I'm an NP and I've done some stuff. But what I do when I interact with people, I love to point out, you just told me. And people who do that, they do really well. Do you know you did that? Do you not understand you? So I think for me, more than anything, is bringing about, and this is a word I used before when we talked about it, is just this beautiful awareness, collaborating with them in their care, being with them in this way, and collaborating and saying, again, please be aware of how amazing you are. And can we go from that point instead of that point?
So they really did that. The culture was identification with peers included a shared experience of all that awful stuff. And what you really did for them was you invited them into another culture where what made you a member of this group was the growth you'd experienced. So you shifted them from we identify with our stuckness to we identify with our capacity for growth. And they begin like they would want to please you. So they would begin to try new things so they'd have something to tell you about when they got back to class.
One of my favorite stories, I just love this story. So it's one of the first I did. And like, I would only take like 10 or 12 guys in this class. And I barely got 10 guys for the first class. Well, as it went on, I would have like 40 or 50 guys trying to sign up for these 10 slots. But I remember the very first class I did, this lovely little guy came up to me because we would have 8 weeks. We'd have one day each week, an hour and a half, and we would go through the Metahab programming and, we'd have things that they need to do. They were given a workbook and there was stuff they had to do. So this one little guy came up to me after the first class and everybody had left the room and he said, Dr. Mikal-Flynn, I'm not very smart. And I don't know if I can do this. And I said, oh, you know what? I hear that from a lot of my students at Sac State. And you know what students at Sac State do when they get there? They have study groups. Do you have some guys you could study with? He goes, well, yeah, I have to. I go, good. Get a study group because that's what people do to pull together. And then you can read it together and you can organize if you trust these guys and whatever. So do that and kind of see how it works. Guy came every week, participated. Last class, we do a graduation. So I had a beautiful certificate for them with their names and calligraphy and Metahab and I didn't even think that was that big a deal. And they'd look at me like, I get this. And so at the end, everybody, we had a nice little graduation, everybody got their stuff. Everybody leaves except that little guy. And I'm going to get emotional when he said, do I really get to get this? Is this what I really get to get? And I said, yeah, remember I told you at the beginning, if you did the work and you came to class, you participated in everything, you get that. And he said, I've never finished anything. And I said, well, you finished this. Now go finish something else. I will never forget that.
And neither will he. He will never forget that either.
Yeah. So that's why I make the choice to really focus on strengths, abilities. I do not minimize people's pain. I really want to make that clear. I'm not like, well, pick yourself up from your, I don't do that. I say that's there. If you need to address it, address it. And then we're going to do this way. So as I said before, my mantra basically is I want you to understand not only what these situations did to you, but what they can and have done for you.
Well, So try to do like the short little mini launch through your steps as it relates to, let's say, the loss of a spouse, 40-year marriage, horribly devastated, hardly able to breathe, grateful that breathing happens automatically, or I went and do it. So what does it look like for someone to go through those stages related to such a horrific, devastating experience of having your life pulled out from under you like that?
Yeah. It's so funny you mentioned this because I do women's wellness days. I live part of the time in Sonoma, and I do forced therapy with women's wellness days. And, it's really cool. And we just did one on Saturday, and there were two women in my group that had lost husbands, one just in December and one almost a year ago. So it's interesting that you're bringing this up because I have this, I can kind of address this and think about this. So when I see that, one of the things that I say, especially we'll say this woman who just lost her husband very suddenly in December, was not, he's a super healthy guy. It's not expected at all. But one of the things I just listened, and she just lost it. Like, she was very emotional, and she goes, I'm so angry. I'm so this, I'm so whatever. And I just listened, and I said, this is so important for you to talk like this. This is so important for you to talk like this. And somebody else said, well, and I think, they get into the shoulds, you should. And I go, I do not should over people. You don't do that. And I said, here's what I'd like you to focus on. Get up tomorrow morning. Focus on that. Get up tomorrow morning, take a shower, and realize again, this is so important. This is part of the process. Your life has changed. Your life has changed forever, and it's not going to go back. And there are some choices that you're going to have to make about that life, but they are your choices. And the first choice I want you to make for the next month is to get up every morning. That's all I want you to do. And so then she talked a little bit more, and kind of at the end when she was, that actually was very calm. She very much calmed down after that, because I'm very much like, I'm giving you the permission to be able to do this, because if you do not do this now, it's going to come up later. So you might as well address it now while it's fresh and you understand what's going on. And if you need some special help to help you, this is not a psychiatric problem. You are not a crazy person. You have gone through a life experience that has upended you. And sometimes we need special help. The other thing, toward the end, when we were talking about it, I said, here's what I want to make sure you know. I feel that you have given us a gift to allow us to be into this experience with you, to share this experience with you. And this is very important for us to be able to send whatever healing we want to do, because we're not going to fix this. I'm not going to fix this. There's no fixing this. There's no getting over stuff. There's a method, there's a way that you eventually learn to live with, and then eventually learn to make meaning, and eventually learn to grow. That's all the way down the line. So stage one is that acute stage. We're providing the permission, but asking her to start thinking about taking control and making choices. The first be, don't do yourself harm. Wake up tomorrow. Then, if you think about that as they sort of go through that, then there's a turning point where there's a recognition. My life has changed forever, but I am alive. I don't know what's going to happen to me. I don't know what's going to happen, but again, I'm going to go in that direction. I'm going to live. I'm going to choose to live. And I am choosing to say yes to life. That is a key thing. Once you choose to say yes to life, then there's a variety of ways you can bring people in to help. Because we were talking to, the altar, well, what can I do for you? What can I do? And like people going, what do you want me to say? Like, I don't know what to say with that. So you get around people and you say yes to life, and people say, hey, like this woman had a friend, she said, I'm going to take this Women's Wellness Day. I'm going to go on a walk with you every day. I'm going to do this, whatever it is. I'm going to go to church again with you. You don't want to go to church because you're super mad at God. And that's completely understandable. So somebody might say, well, let's go to, you don't have to participate, but let's just sit in church and maybe go to breakfast. So there's a variety of things that people can do. And once they start getting back into that, then again, stage 4 is adaptation and adjustment. You are adjusting not to the loss, but to a new life you have now. And that new life incorporates a loss, but also opens up some time, some space that may allow you to do some things that you hadn't thought of before because you were very focused on this relationship. That relationship has shifted, and now you do that. And also finding some meaning in your suffering. I don't ever like the word, this happened for a reason. I don't even know what that means. It's like people like, I just don't understand what that means. What I say is you have found out some things about yourself and life that had you not gone through this, you may not know. Stage 5, again, get back into there. Do something. If you're retired, whatever, volunteer, do something, move, get engaged, do something that's going on. And then stage 6 is that's way, I go, don't even think about that because there's all sorts of cool stuff in stage 6 you're not seeing right now. And that may be, I went, back to school. I started volunteering at a certain place. I went on a trip, like my friend, I'm going on a trip. I would never have gone on this trip with my husband or whatever, or my wife, but now that it's there, so you start to think about that. And again, this is insights and practices over time, what people do. Now, even when you've Metahab and you're at the end and you're on that trip you never thought you'd take, but now you took, you're on that trip, you're in Portugal, Italy, whatever, and you think about your spouse and you cry. That you're feeling it, but it doesn't mean you haven't grown. So that's okay. Go, oh my God, I'm crying again, and go, yeah, that's your body's way, it's your mind's way of letting you keep in the know about this wonderful person you've had this relationship with, but now you're here and they're looking to. So I think those kinds of things, I help people, again, focus on. It's movement, it's action, because I always say when we talk about being compassionate, empathy and sympathy are feelings. I don't focus on feelings. We can feel, oh, I feel for you. Oh, I feel what you're going through. I feel how that's, I don't know, that's neither here nor there. Compassion is action. Compassion is when somebody says, I know you're going through this. I happen to be going to this Women's Wellness Day and I'm buying your ticket for you and I'm going to take you. That's compassion. Compassion is, we go to the same church. I know you really don't want to do it, but when you're ready, I'm going to call you every Saturday night and see if you want to go on Sunday. And when you say yes to me, I'm going to pick you up and we're going to go and we'll go to dinner, breakfast or whatever. That's compassion. Compassion is action. So lastly, when I listen to people's experiences, I don't even like the word stories. I listen to their experience. And when I hear these 3 things in their experience and they're explaining it to me, I go, you're going to do fine. And one of those things is hope, gratitude, purpose. when I hear in their story, they go, I'm still hopeful about this, or I'm still looking forward to this, or I still believe in this, or I still whatever. And then they'll say something about, it's crazy. I'm so grateful that, thank the Lord, thank God that, think that we had these grandchildren, thank I have these friends, thank, you have some great, thank, I have this or whatever. And then they'll say something like, and it really helps because now I'm working at such and such a place, or I'm volunteering here, or I go help people knit or whatever. And I go, still tough, but you're going to do just fine.
That's awesome. That is so true. So at the end of these, I always ask people for like your 1 minute wisdom. If people fast forwarded through our entire time here together, but you could have one thing that you want them to carry out of this, what would it be? It's like your elevator speech.
Yeah, for sure. I think recognize awareness, capacity. We are built, we are surviving, thriving machines. And we are built to be able to, we are rugged and built to be able to do this. And it doesn't happen unless you engage. So as much as it's hard to go into that cave and enter into that, you will never get out the other side or learn unless you get into that cave. And lastly, I would say the thing that's most important, again, is to, over time, recognize what past events that you have gone through, past struggles you've gone through, have taught you, so that you recognize, again, not only what these situations did to you, but what they did for you. And regain, go back and focus on how you did it and how that manifests itself in your life in the past, and bring that forward.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for being with me. And I'm going to turn off the recording, and I hopefully will see you sometime soon.
Yeah, I